Okay, in this video we're going to be going over setting up our magazines to be spawned with our weapon. So when we press play, by the way, I went ahead and got rid of the magazine that spawns right where the player's head is. But when the weapon spawns, I want 2 to 3 magazines to be spawned with it. Now currently nothing spawns, so we need to, one, the challenges we have to figure out are, okay, we have this weapon, we're spawning it. How do we know what magazine? Well, we're going to spawn the magazine class anyways, but how do we know which magazine row to spawn? Such as, let's say I had one row for the AR-15 just like this, and one row for the VAL. When we spawn the weapon, how would we know how to determine that? And so we know which magazine to spawn. So that'll be the main challenge. So let's go ahead and solve that. So in our weapon base, let's scroll up to the structure, and we're going to add 2 more things. One's going to be a reference, well, not a reference, a class, the blueprint class of a magazine base, and the other one is going to be the row name. It's pretty much just going to be a T array of the row names of the magazines that we want to spawn. So that's in case we want to have more than one of these different styles of magazines, such as the normal metal mag and a PMag. So because we are making changes to the structure, we need to go ahead and close the editor, and we'll make those changes and reopen it. So first thing, I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. We want an array of row names. So T array, F name, magazine row names. Then we want another section. It's going to be a T subclass of. Type is going to be class A magazine base because we're forward declaring. Or sorry, not a pointer. And call this one BP magazine class, just like so. And build. All right, let's reopen the editor. I'm going to go ahead and restore. So here's our magazine data and our weapon data. All right, I've actually went ahead and filled this out in the past as well, because I was having some weird issues again with the editor. I don't know if it's just 4.23 or what the issue is, but I don't know. But pretty much it'll end up looking just like this. So magazine row names will be empty. We're going to go ahead and add one. It's going to be AR-15 row. It's going to be the same, or AR-15 magazine, sorry. It's going to be the row name of the magazines that we want. And for the BP magazine class, you'll see we have the C++ class and the blueprint derived class. We're going to select the blueprint one and save. So now in our weapon base.cpp, where we have our setup weapon, we can access it. So what we're going to be accessing first is the magazine row names. And what I want to do is I want to check and see if the amount of elements in this array are greater than 0. If they are, that means there is in fact a given row name, so we can go ahead and just spawn the actor. But as you can assume from the start, setup weapon is running only on the client. I mean, it's running on the client and the server because it's being essentially kind of called from begin play. So what we're going to have to do is make a separate, what do you call it? A section for server. So what we can do to that is if role equals role authority, then we're on the server. So I'm going to do a log set up weapon server. All right. So now we can get access to, well, we can do what we need to do. So I want to do if weapon data magazine row names dot num is greater than 0, then we do everything else. So for now, I'm just going to do the normal spawn actor. So I'm going to do an if a magazine base magazine equals get world spawn actor, and the type is going to be the blueprint class. So no, it's going to be a magazine, oh, son of a magazine base. And then we need the class that we're going to spawn. So weapon data, blueprint magazine class, then the location and the rotation. So what I'm going to do is this for the weapon, get actor location, this get actor rotation, and then we need our spawn parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and make a set of spawn parameters. So it's f actor spawn parameters, spawn params, spawn params dot, I want to do be no fail, set that equal to true, and I want to set the owner to equal this. So the owner of the magazine is going to be the weapon. All right, then we pass in spawn params as our last parameter, and we can check. So we're going to do another log. Magazine spawned success. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and build. So by default, we have our, let's see, begin play, we're passing in false. Okay. So by default, it should spawn and set up the magazine just like normal. At least I hope. So let's see here. Let's check the logs. Set up magazine server, or set up weapon server and magazine spawn success. So we know we spawned it. And we can see the magazine. Let me just pick up the weapon. We can see the magazine right here. So it's got its default information, which is good. But now we need to set it up. One, we don't want to use this by default and begin play. And it's going to be the same exact case when we go to actually spawning or creating our loot spawns, such as like our weapons, our pickups, and stuff like that. We're going to have to make some minor changes to how we're going to actually spawn those and set them up. So let's see here. So under begin play, I'm going to comment out our setup magazine function call. And we are going to have to essentially call this ourselves, but we need to do it on all clients. So one, we could either do a onRep event in the weapon base, which would trigger pretty much all the setups of it and have it take in an array of magazines as the parameter and loop through them and pretty much call setup magazine accordingly based on that. Or we could have an onRep event fire on magazine base on our base class. I'm thinking probably it's going to be better to have it on our weapon base class to have that trigger. So let's do that. So let's see, I'm thinking just create a replicated Boolean. Let's think here. All right, so in our weapon base, we have our replicated, well, it's not replicated, but extra magazines. That needs to be replicated. So let's go ahead and do that. So U property replicated, and same thing here, U property replicated. Now let's go ahead and set them up to replicate, which I do not have that function already on here. So I want to copy it from magazine base. And we need to include net Unreal Network. Right. Now we want to replicate extra magazines as well as current magazine. So hopefully I'll remember, this is something that we can replicate to the owner only. So as we pick up the weapon, the owner is being set to the client that picked up the weapon. So that means the replicated information will only be shared between the owner who has the weapon in hand, essentially. So that'll be something to change in the future, but I'm going to leave it like this for now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and compile, just make sure it's okay. And let's see here. We can assign extra magazines. We can pretty much add magazine to that array. I'm going to do not current magazine. Oops. Extra magazines dot add. Do add magazine. All right. So that should trickle down. Then we can have an onRep event fire. When that onRep event fires, we will set up, we will call all the, we're going to loop through extra magazines and call the setup function on all of them. All right, that sounds like a plan. I'm trying to think. All right. So it's going to be a U property replicated using. It's going to be bool default magazines spawned. Set that to false by default. Make a U function. Void onRep magazines spawned. Right, set that to false. On magazine spawned. We're going to loop through, so we're going to do a for loop. So a magazine base, magazine n, extra magazines. Right, so now we can do pretty much our setup. So we need to get access to the magazine row names. So f name magazine row name equals weapon data. Oops, I need to make that a T array. All right. I also want to do the quick check again. So if weapon data magazine row names dot num is greater than 0. Here we will call a setup. So magazine setup magazine. We're going to pass in, for now, I'm just going to pass in the very first element. So weapon data magazine row names, first element 0. And we're just going to pass in false, so hopefully we'll be able to see the magazine. And print out a log just to see. And finish our replicated using. Oh, we also need to set default magazine spawn to replicate. So after we spawn all of them, I want to do default magazine spawned, set that to true. So false by default in the constructor. Then toggle it to true, meaning the onRep event should fire after the magazines have been spawned and added. Right, so we have magazine spawn success. Our onRep is not firing. Weapon base. Trying to think. It is not set up to replicate. Let's set it to replicate and try again. Nope, and we're locked up. Right, so the crash is something that we have done. That's regarding replication. Right, so let's for now comment out our setup magazine and build. Let's see if that was the cause. Okay, so the calling of setup magazine is the reason. Let's also check, make sure that's been set up. Right, yeah, AR-15 mag. Let's check setup magazine. We're going to move this into magazine data as well. Because right now mesh component, I don't think was set up for anything. All right, see if that causes it to crash, which it does. So that's something to do with setup magazine. However, it seems like it runs fine on the server. So if role less than role authority, we're going to run setup magazine, and this should succeed. And if it does, I'm assuming it's something regarding magazine row names being invalid. Nope, it's failing altogether. All right, so let's really troubleshoot why. All right, so let's do a check here. What should we check? We'll do if magazine is not a null pointer, just to make sure. Then we're going to print out the log. And I just realized I forgot to call it on the server as well. So we're going to do on rep magazine spawned, just make that call on the server. Right, so we have setting up magazine on rep that is being called on the server. So it's valid on the server, but not the client. So I'm pretty much just going to set this up in here just to make sure that that actually was the case. In which case we might need to almost add a little delay. All right, just going to crash. Nope, good there. So let's use two clients. One is the server, one is normal. So that way we should be able to see it. Yep, as the server, the magazine is spawned right there in the pistol grip. So I'm thinking we need to add a little delay. So we can do that via timer. So we're going to include it's just timer manager. Yeah. F timer handle T. Actually, since we're only going to run this once, we're just going to do it in here. So F timer handle T handle. Let's do get world get timer manager dot set timer. Then the T handle this. Then we need the reference to the function. So a weapon base. We don't have a function just yet. So we're going to make it just a temporary one. Void mags spawned. Do it right below the on rep. Mag spawned should be the delay. Do just 3 seconds. False. And the initial delay. I think that should be how it is. Let's do a log to see. Delayed function and build. One Mississippi, two Mississippi, three. All right, you not run at all. Let me triple check that I have that set up right for the timer real quick. It's the handle function, the delay, what you want it to run at. Okay. One Mississippi, two Mississippi, there we go. Setting up on rep. And there now the client sees the magazine. So let's just do to the replication. So instead of just a 1.5, right, There you see we have the corresponding magazine. I'll pick up the weapon. Right there, it's got its collision, and it's correct. Okay, so now we have the magazine set up. So I'm going to go ahead and remove some logs that are not needed. And we are good to go there. You can actually call the onRep immediately on the server because the server already knows what elements are in the array. Okay. Just triple check. Is magazine there? Which it is. Okay, picked it up. Everything's working like normal. Alright, so now we have our magazine spawning with the weapon. All we have to do is simply change this false to true, and the magazine will have no collisions, and it will be hidden, meaning it is attached to our weapon, which it is by this replicated array here. So now we should see no magazine, which we do. Well, we don't, and there are no collisions, both the client and the server. So we are good to go there. Right, so let's reiterate what we've done. So we have created two new variables in our, well, one array and one variable in our structure for our data table. One being an array of magazine row names, which is linked to pretty much a list of these here. So if we have two more magazines with, well, two more magazine rows for this weapon, we can add those to this magazine row names array as well. We added a reference to the magazine class as shown right here. Now this is so we can spawn the blueprint class instead of just spawning the magazine, well, the C++ magazine class directly. And that is so we have references to, well, that are valid to the data table, just to make our lives a little bit easier. Now that we have that set, when we want to check, make sure we're on the server for when we go to spawn it, and we're going to check if the magazine row names is valid. Well, meaning there's more than one element in it. One more thing I want to do is if magazine row names is greater than 0 and weapon data BP magazine class is valid. So that's just kind of like a double check. So then we create our spawn parameters and we spawn the magazine using the blueprint class. We're just setting it to the location and the rotation of the weapon itself, this class. Then from there, we add the magazine that we spawned to our T array that has a bunch of pointers to the magazine classes that have been spawned in the world. Then we call our onRep. Now because we're on the server, that's why we're calling this onRep. We can do it immediately because the server already knows what magazines have been added because it's immediate. We don't have to wait. The server's not waiting for it to be replicated at all. So because we have to worry about that delay, we created a timer with a 1.5 second delay that calls the function mag spawned, which simply toggles our onRep replicated variable from false to true, meaning the magazines have spawned, which fires this onRep event on the clients, in which case again, we check and make sure magazine rows is greater than 0, meaning there's an element in there, and then we get it. So from there we loop through all of the extra magazines that are inside of the extra magazines array. We check, make sure it's not a null pointer. If it isn't, meaning it's valid, we call our setup magazine function. We pass in the magazine row name so we know which magazine to spawn, such as AR-15 mag, which spawns, well, this element right here, AR-15 mag. That's the row name. So it's going to give it the static mesh for the AR-4. It's going to give it the capacity of 30, and it's going to assign the magazine name of AR-15 mag to it. Well, we haven't done that part yet, but that's not really important. because we already pretty much have access to it anyway, so whatever. And from there, it just does everything like before. It simply sets it up. So that's really all there is. In the next video, we're going to be modifying a bit to spawn more than one weapon. I mean, more than one magazine for the weapon. It's going to be a random between 1 and 3. I think that's what I'm going to go with. And we're going to set it so one of those magazines gets set up. Well, the first initial magazine gets set as our, where is it? Current magazine. Because as you recall, in our fire function, if our current magazine has no ammo in it, or we don't have a current magazine, well, we're simply not going to fire. So that's what we're going to do in the next video, and I will see you then.